I wanted to say a great big thank you to every one of you that have trusted me to help coach you in starting something new. You guys have kept me really busy the first half of the year, and for that, I am grateful. I know there's more of you that have dreams and ideas you want to fulfill and reach for. So if you've not yet, make sure to head over to unashamedlyu.com to schedule your first coaching session for completely free. I cannot wait to help you start living out your dreams and fulfilling that calling that you are feeling. Let's make this the year you live in faith over fear. Hello and welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast, a space to enlighten, encourage, and empower you to go out and unashamedly be who God is calling you to be. I am your host, Jamie Herndon. I pray you hear less of me and more of Him as you listen to today's episode. Let's grow together. I feel so blessed to have the guest that we have on today. I first met her through her daughter. We were friends, always meeting up at camp meetings and conferences. And then one of my childhood friends, Megan, became her daughter-in-law. So I have known her family for a while. She's an incredible speaker. She's spoken at several women's conferences. Every time I've heard her, I have been blessed, and it's been life-changing. So I cannot wait to have her on and share her heart with us today. Kathy Sorah, I am just so excited to have you on the Unashamedly You podcast. Take a moment and introduce yourself to those that may not know you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I mean, what an honor. I mean, it's a great privilege for me to get to be on this. And I listen to it. I love it. And then I hear the young girls at church, oh, did you hear Sister Unashamedly You? Just recently, my daughter-in-law, she really got some good, valuable information about raising kids with someone, I can't remember who it was. So I think it's so admirable what you're doing. And also it's work. Anything you do like this, I mean, it's work. I know that from experience. I've never done a podcast, but I know on your part, it's work.
It is. My husband and I were just talking about this. I was telling him, I said, I am so sorry because I'm the one, and it looks like, Jamie Herndon's podcast. I'm like, but people do not understand the time that he takes editing. And I was telling him, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't really know how I got you into this, but thank you so much. And he said, honestly, I don't want you to ever think that I don't count it an honor. He's like, we feel honored to be able to be a part of something that really it's bigger than us. It's more than what we have to offer. I am hosting, but I am interviewing women of God and women that are doing something for God and for the kingdom of God. And it's such a high honor to just be on this side. I can promise you. I'm so grateful for that.
Well, it's very admirable of you.
Thank you.
Well, I was born and raised in beautiful Southern California to a Church of Christ dad and a Pentecostal mother. And before I was even born, they made a plan that they would raise all their children in both churches. So I had a very unique upbringing. And then the plan was that when we were 13 years of age, we could make our choice as to where we wanted to go. So needless to say, it was unique. And when my husband was 20 years old, he was saved in our church, and God delivered him from a very bad lifestyle. And he was just exactly what I needed. He was on fire for God and zealous. And that's what I wanted, because even though my dad was a wonderful man, I wanted to make sure that my husband was in church and on fire for God. And he was. And so we went on to have 3 children. Marty is married to Megan, Rusty's married to Lisa, and Heidi's married to Blaine. They're all involved in the work of God, and I'm very blessed. And then, of course, they have blessed me with 7 wonderful grandchildren.
Well, that's absolutely incredible. I cannot believe that your parents wanted to raise you guys in both lifestyles. So I guess when you were 13, you decided to be Pentecostal, or how did that work?
I did. I can't speak for my siblings, but I really believe it was, yes, we were in church 5 nights a week at different churches, and then twice on Sunday. And on Sundays, we would rotate. Usually me and my brother went together with my dad, and my 2 older sisters went together. And then my younger sister, then she would go with the flow. I learned really good alto at the Church of Christ. They don't have music. They're wonderful people, but you can learn to sing harmony wonderful because they're very good at that. And then at the Pentecostal church, we're like music, music, music. So we all had to take piano lessons, and we were a very musical family. I believe it was, for me, I believe it was the presence of the Lord. I'm going to define it this way. When I was about 12 years old, my dad would drop me off at our church, at the Pentecostal church. I got the Holy Ghost when I was 9 years old. And so that was my church always, even though I went with my dad and I loved him and he's a good man and they're wonderful people. I would never put them down or what they have. But I remember being about 12 years old, and my dad would drop me off at the church because his church got off earlier, and then he would go ahead and drop me off. And I remember I would walk in the foyer, and the presence of God while they were singing song service would be so strong. And I remember just standing there alone and just closing my eyes and letting the presence of God just flood me. And so I guess that's how I would define it. I know the Holy Ghost is real, and it was real in my life, but that presence of God and the freedom to worship. I love to worship. I know when we first started evangelizing, I was so nervous. I was so scared to worship freely in front of people. But I know I've been to both places, and I'm not saying I don't want any of my relatives that are Church of Christ to think I would ever put them down. At the same time, you cannot discount the presence of God and the realness of it and the freedom to worship freely. And so when we started evangelizing, I was so nervous I remember we were at a conference and I was trying to be like Miss Prim and Proper and looking at the other evangelist wife, because I really didn't know. I had never been raised around ministry. I was kind of thrown into it. I was terrified. Literally, I had sores in my mouth. I was so scared. And, you're thinking that you've got to look this way, you've got to act a certain way. And so I remember being at this conference and I was trying to act prim and proper. And then all of a sudden it hit me. No, you know too much and you love to worship, and no, you can't stop worshiping. And so I did. I just remember I just started worshiping because that's just too important. It's not about how you dress. It's not about what you wear. And we can get so caught up in the image part of it, being apostolic, the image part of the purses and the shoes and the clothes. And that's not where it's at. That doesn't even matter to God. What matters is your worship and your love for him.
That is so true. There have been times whenever you just feel the weight of the world. I can remember this feeling as a young girl going through some things with our family and then throughout life, like even on up into teen years and then newly married and then after having a baby. There's just so many times that you'll have the weight of the world you feel like on your shoulders, and you can walk into the church and it'll just be prayer meeting. I'll just be walking into the church by myself, and just the presence of God, the peace of God that you can feel just walking into his presence and into his house. There's nothing like it. And no matter what you have and no matter what this, the spirit that is there, it's like whenever you walk into the house of God where the anointing is flowing and where the Holy Ghost is, it's just different. He dwells differently in those places and you can feel it.
Absolutely.
And just being able to recognize that as a young girl, that's an incredible story. And I'm glad that you shared that with us. So you spoke at a ladies meeting at FPC NLR probably 13 or more years ago. I know that I did not have children, but I did have my notes. I kept those notes for a long time. It was absolutely incredible. And while we were talking and preparing about today, we talked about something that honestly, it's a ministry that is needed more than ever, and it is hospitality. And I know that you have a heart for that. Can you define hospitality and what that actually means?
Yes. Biblical hospitality is very simple. It's just to be generous with guests. That's what it means. However, it encompasses a very broad spectrum of serving others. And biblically, we are admonished to be given to hospitality, to be lovers of hospitality, to practice hospitality, and to use hospitality without grumbling about it. And it is also a very vital part of our salvation to be hospitable to strangers and to do good deeds. When Jesus was teaching about separating the sheep from the goats at judgment, for I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you brought me together with yourselves and welcomed and entertained and lodged me. I was naked and you clothed me with help and ministering care. I was in prison and you came to see me. And when the righteous say, Lord, how did we know we were doing those things? He's going to say, listen, when you were doing those acts of hospitality for the least of your brothers and sisters, without regard to their status or their importance, you were doing it unto me. And the first biblical example of hospitality was when God welcomed Adam and Eve into his new earth. And he provided them with clothing and food and shelter, and he fellowshiped with them every day. And Abraham saw some strangers coming down the road, and he went into hospitality mode, and he made sure their feet were washed and there was food prepared. And according to Luke and John, their accounts, Mary and Martha's home was a hot spot of hospitality for Jesus and his disciples. And sometimes I just think about what fun they must have had laughing and talking and all that stuff. And I have had a lot of company. And I have also been on the other end of it as a guest in many people's homes. And there are so many life's lessons to learn from being served and from serving. And it is really sad that with all our modern amenities today and all the things we have, we are busier than ever and we entertain less. So if you're listening and you're thinking my house is not nice enough, or I don't want to mess up my house, you're both wrong. Because the importance and enrichment of laughter, camaraderie, playing a game, or simply having conversation cannot be underestimated. And if you are thinking that you can't have someone over because you have kids and the house is cluttery, that is ridiculous. That is everyday life. When you have children, now I have my grandchildren over, it's crazy. There's toys on the floor, there's crafts, there's stuff sparkles on the floor from them gluing sparkles on paper, just them playing. That is ridiculous. There is a difference between filthy or dirty and just everyday living. If you have a dining room table that is 6 inches full of junk mail and diapers and just stuff that just needs a few minutes to put away or thrown away, then that means actually that you're just lazy and slothful. Because if you can spend hours a day on your phone or your device, that is not acceptable. That is not acceptable. There's a difference in filthy and normal everyday clutter. In fact, if you've got every countertop full of stuff, your floor needs vacuumed and all that, turn on this podcast and listen to it while you clean your house. And there's lots of episodes, so you can get a whole lot done by listening to this podcast. So you need to take the first step and just invite someone over. And I don't suggest, if you're worried about who to invite, don't invite someone that kind of intimidates you. Look around you at church. There's Brother George. Now he's a widower. And there's Brother Bob. He's a single man. I think I'm going to invite them over for a dinner and just make it simple and quit worrying about all that small stuff.
You come right out of the gate just preaching to us. I needed a lot of I needed a lot of what you've already said. This is so good. You guys, I told you that's why I invited her on the podcast. I know that you would be blessed. I already have notes. I love that you had talked about, just everyday life is normal. And there are times that I can think, I don't have time for this or that. And I do think, well, you get caught in the scroll and you might scroll seeing all these perfect houses and you look around and your house isn't perfect. And a lot of it's because it's just you spent so much time scrolling, you could have been spent time doing instead. And you said we're busier than ever. We've got more life amenities than we've ever had. And, you know, we had grandparents that were having to use wash tubs to wash their clothes, and they were having to do all these really hard things that we're not having to do. And they had time to host and invite people in, cook meals. You talk about, people talk about having lots of people in their homes, big families in their homes, and their parents or their grandparents were in there and they were making these big meals. And that's something that we don't even really have to do. We can do takeout, which is something that I probably prefer to do when people come over. I really prefer to even serve my family takeout because I cook so terribly. But there are ways around having something perfect. But talking about being on social media, maybe it's because, of online social media and then even Pinterest. You look at these things and you think their homes look perfect, their parties look perfect, and you've got to have all these things in a certain way. Or maybe it's just somebody's just really nervous to be the one to host. Maybe they have never hosted before, or their parents didn't host and they don't really know how to do that. Can you talk to someone that maybe just feels too intimidated to host?
Oh, yeah. You just got to do it. You got to put your foot in the water, invite someone that you're not intimidated by, and quit worrying about what will I fix? What will we talk about? Listen, it's very fulfilling to have someone to your home. And I'm going to give you some tips about what to do. But if you're afraid about what to talk about, a lot of people, they just don't know the art of conversation. They're worried if they have someone to their home, it's going to get. Now, me, it tortures me to have lulls in conversation. Literally, I've got to fill in that gap. And sometimes I just say that seems like the dumbest things because I've got to fill in that gap. But you can never go wrong with asking questions. Brother George, where were you born? Where were you raised? What were your hobbies? You can't go wrong. And then those questions just completely take a life of your own. So if you're too nervous or intimidated to do it, do it. Just put your foot in the water, open your door, your heart, and your home with an atmosphere of welcoming generosity. And it's just that simple.
Go over some of the guidelines that you said that you have for hosting.
Okay. Clean your home, but it doesn't have to be spotless. Set your times. I have learned that this is very helpful, especially if it's for an evening. Set your times. Hey, Brother George, would you and Brother Bob come over between 5:30 and 8? That gives clarity. It means you can go to bed early. It just sets the tone. It lets them know what to expect. Paper plates are as good as china. Old furniture is a place to sit just like new furniture. Another thing that's important, if you have someone over that has children, do not be embarrassed to speak up if their children are standing on your sofa, running through the house like a crazy little crazy person. Don't be embarrassed or ashamed or afraid to speak up and tell them to respect your home in front of their parents. Hey, little Johnny, don't stand on my sofa. I don't want food and drink in the living room. Whatever your house rules are, make them respect them because that's teaching them a lesson also. And if you have children and they're watching you, it's teaching them big time how to act at other people's house. If you're worried about food, don't panic. I love what you just said. You just took words out of my mouth about food. A grilled cheese sandwich is just as good as a gourmet meal. I personally do not like to cook. It's just almost a drudgery for me. But I do it. I did when my kids were little. And if I can freeze food, if I make a meal, I'm hoping I get several meals out of it for me and my husband. I'll put them in containers and freeze them. But another option is bring your own food. Now, if Brother George is coming over, fix him something. But if you're just having maybe another family that you've never invited over, say, hey, it's going to be bring your own food. Now, I do that a lot. I have a lot of people to my home, mostly ministers by default. I do. But also have children. And when they come over, especially Mother's Day, we always usually do that. Bring your own food. You can go through fast food. You can order from a restaurant. And then we don't have to cook or clean up. It's really nice. You can just have dessert. Just have conversation and something to eat. People do not care. You got to quit sweating the small stuff and you got to relax and enjoy people because it is about connection and not perfection. really quickly, I'm just going to tell, I wasn't going to tell this, but I'm going to tell it. Just recently, because I don't like to cook, and I was really busy and I was in a hurry. And I always keep at my house Walmart meatballs, great value meatballs, because my grandkids like them. I can stick them in the air fryer. And I had some of those, and my husband was going, "You got something to eat around here?" And I didn't know what to fix, but I had a jar of cheap spaghetti sauce. And I just put the two together, and I had a little bit of Italian seasonings, and I had a little bit of salad. And afterwards, my husband goes, "You know what? I think you're a better cook now than you were when we first got married." And I never told him. And it just cracked me up. I thought, if you only knew that there was this jar of spaghetti sauce and Walmart meatballs. It doesn't matter what you have. It's about fellowship and giving of your heart in your home.
There have been times that I have been invited somewhere and it's Little Caesars pizza, 2-liter drinks, maybe Capri Suns for the kids, something super small. But you got to sit down, enjoy time together, enjoy fellowship, and you leave and your heart feels full and you were happy. Everything was fun. Your kids had a great time and you just felt better. And that is really, honestly, I feel like what hospitality is all about is about how they feel when they're there, how they feel when they left. It's not always about everything being perfect. There have been times that I have had way less than perfect circumstances, had people over and had a great time. And then there have been times where I have just really stressed, had to have the food perfect, had to have this going, had to have that going, spent lots of money to host. And whenever they left, I'm like, man, I hope everybody had a good time. I have been worked to death. I've had no fun. I spent money and time, and I've just been in here cleaning and cooking. And I've had to learn, like, stop. Don't worry about what it looks like in the middle. There's going to be a mess in the middle of it.
Absolutely.
Just sit down and enjoy it. Be the host the whole time, I guess is kind of what I'm trying
Yes.
to say. It's hard to do.
No, you got it. You got it down pat. You're exactly right. That is exactly right. Here are some guidelines for a guest if you have been invited to a home for dinner or dessert. First of all, it is an honor to be invited to someone's home. And if you have children, this is a perfect opportunity to teach them to show respect for that home, to the furniture, and to the family. And to teach them that when you have company to your house, that they need to behave. Now, what I did when my children were small, when we were invited to someone's home, my boys had a box of Legos. And then when my daughter came along, I would have a few toys for her and we would take them with us. So that's a very good thing to do if you have children. Take something that they can sit and play with. When I was a little girl, my parents would, if we went to a guest home or a host home, they would say, "You sit there and you don't move and you don't talk and you don't ask for anything." So I learned through that to be respectful. And then with my children, though, I made sure they had a few toys, and I made sure that I would ask the hostess, "Can I get my kids something to drink?" Because they might be thirsty or hungry. Sometimes people would have us over and not eat for 30, 45 minutes, and my kids would be starving. So it's okay to go ahead and take the initiative to make sure your children are taken care of. It is a nice gesture, but not necessary to bring a gift for the host. A thank you card, however, is appropriate. When food is served, ask if you can help. This is not a restaurant. If you come to my house and I'm still making the salad and you say, "Can I help?" I will probably hand you a cucumber, a peeler, a knife, and a cutting board and say, "Can you cut this for me?" And then sometimes I'll say, "Just sit there and just talk to me." Probably the biggest thing is to not overstay your welcome. If there was a clarity of a time given like 5:30 to 8, do not stay longer. It is time to get up and say your thanks and what a privilege it was to come and make your goodbyes. Now, if they did not give you a time to leave, there are big hints that are given by the host and hostess. If they yawn, if they start saying, "I am so tired and I've got so much to do tomorrow," if she gets up and starts straightening the pillows on her couch and collecting cups and taking to the kitchen and wiping off counters and loading the dishwasher, this is your big hint. It's as if they are holding a huge poster board that is saying, "It's time for you to leave." And lastly, always clean up any messes your children made before leaving. Put away toys or any other messes. Now, let me say this as when I have company over and they have children, I make it really comfortable. I feel like I've had lots of kids here, and I have a lot of evangelists stay at my home. I have a whole upstairs that they can almost take control of. And I'm easy. I like for kids to play with toys. I like for them to, be funny and silly and all that stuff. But you just want to make sure that you clean up their messes and they are respectful of your home. Now, there are guidelines for staying overnight. If you stay overnight at someone's house or longer, the game changes somewhat, because it's not that 2 or 3 hours of special attention. Now it's a little different, because the family you're staying with, they have lives, they have things to do, places to go. So make yourself at home. Your host want you to be comfortable, and if you need something, do not be afraid to ask. On the other hand, my house is not a hotel, and I am not your personal maid. So plunge your own toilet if it needs unstopped. If you're there for several days and you got towels that need washed, take them to the laundry and wash them. And if you have children, make them respect my home. If you fix food in the kitchen, clean up your mess. And when you leave, ask how they would like the bed to be done. Usually just go ahead and strip the sheets and the pillowcases. Now, if they say, hey, just leave the bed alone, just leave it alone. And then you take your laundry, your towels, and you put them together. If they don't have a laundry basket, you can take them to the laundry room, or you can leave them in the bathtub, or make it easy for them to find it. However, because this is not a hotel but a home, and your hostess is the maid that does not get paid, she is not interested in cleaning globs of toothpaste off of the counter when you are gone, or hairs out of the tub, or hairs on the floor. So leave your quarters as good or better than you found them. And if you will just, as a guest, combine and contribute respect with good conversation, you cannot go wrong. Now, if you have guests staying for longer than a day, I like to clarify what we are doing the next day. And I always tell people, I don't fix breakfast. You probably won't see me till dinner. We'll be in and out. Make yourself at home. I show them where everything is, the coffee, everything, breakfast items, whatever. And I want them to feel at home in my home. And so I think clarification is always good and helpful. Otherwise, people are like, what am I supposed to do? Are they going to fix lunch? Are we, what's happening? So just use clarity. Now, practicing hospitality at church, not everybody can have people to their home. And as the church, it is the mother, and it is to be hospitable and welcoming. This is your church home and your church family. So when you see strangers come in, or the unfamiliar, or someone's going through something, you need to make people feel so welcome at your home church. If you see someone just sitting by themselves, leave your friends, leave your family, or take your kids with you. Go sit with them and get to know them and meet them, and be thoughtful of other people and guests. And if there's a church dinner, be aware of your surroundings. If Brother George is sitting over there alone and you don't really know him, tell your family, we're going to go sit with Brother George and get to know him better. All of that is part of being hospitable and making people feel welcome. And then there just are aspects of everyday hospitality, dropping food by someone's home when they're sick, a hospital visit, visiting someone in the rest home, slipping someone a card of encouragement, giving someone a ride. You just got to look for opportunities to serve. On the other hand, remember that if someone is in the hospital, or they're homesick with a new baby, or not homesick, but they're recuperating from having a new baby or a surgery, that is recuperation time. It is not party time. So when you go to see someone, call first in a situation like that. It's always good to call first, because I know my mother had ALS, Lou Gehrig's, and that disease went from her feet up to her throat, and she couldn't talk. But her mind was going 100 miles an hour, and she could think clearly, and her eyes could see. So it was such a blessing when someone would call and say, I'd like to come by and visit your mom, it was awesome. But that way we could tell them what would be a good time to come, because maybe we were giving her a bath or taking care of her in other ways. So you got to just assess each situation with a lot of wisdom and give, and it will be given back to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And that is what hospitality is all about.
So many points that you made were so good in those guidelines. Talking about the church as well, I think so many times we think of hospitality as being hosting in our home, because that is a large part of it. But there are so many other ways to be hospitable that are really important as well. And really, probably the church being the most important. The pastor can't go around welcoming every single person that walks through the doors. He's on the platform, he's going to preach, but we're in the audience. You're there, you're the face that they see. We're standing at the door. Make sure that we are hostessing each one of us and making sure that God's house is welcoming for every person that comes in, because they're there for a reason.
Yes. Yes.
Everything was so good. One thing that I wanted to go back to is you were talking about being hospitable and having people into your home. And even whenever you go to others' homes, it's just a really good way to train your children. So I'm in the woes of raising children right now. And I've got one that she's about to enter her teen years. Of course, she feels completely grown. And then I have one that's turning 10. And it feels like she's easier to go to other people's homes or when we have people in our home. But then I have one that is 5, and he is a really rambunctious, bubbly boy. So I kind of have a wide range of ages here. But I'll be honest, it isn't always easy when you're in the training years to make sure that you're doing it right. So give us moms some wisdom when it comes to making sure that we are raising our children to be hospitable as well, whether we are in our home or when we go to someone's home.
Well, home is where it all begins. Everything begins there. Respect, kindness, honesty, hospitality. Your children are watching you. You are their biggest example. The church is not responsible for teaching children how to behave. That is the parents' responsibility and obligation to teach and train their children not only morals and principles, but how to develop lifelong developmental social skills and manners that will serve them well into their future. When they get a job, when they go to school, they need to know how to act. And by guests coming into your home, by watching you and letting them help, your children learn how to set a table when they're small. What's your little boy's name?
Ezra.
Ezra, here's some paper, and see these markers? You're going to make some pictures of dinosaurs or whatever they draw, and put our names on them or put their names on them, whatever you want to do. And we'll use those for placemats. And you can draw them into welcoming people and make it so exciting for them to have company over. By watching you, they'll learn how to greet guests at the door, to take their coat or purse, to offer them a drink, show them where to sit, the art of conversation, not to interrupt an adult unless it's an emergency. The guests go first. That it is so exciting to have guests over, and especially how to get the house clean for company. Hurry and pick your blocks up off the floor. They're going to be here in 10 minutes. Hurry. And you can make it fun and exciting. I'm telling you, having people over is the greatest motivator for cleaning house more than anything else. Wouldn't you say so?
For sure. Another thing is whenever you're having anything at your house, I can get more done, not just with myself and cleaning, but my husband seems to really help out. I mean, I'm like, can you move this?
Yes,
Can you move that? And normally it may not would get done. And then now it's like everybody's moving around doing stuff. So it's a great,
it
I've
is.
always said, if you want something done around your house that you can't get done, throw a birthday party, have Thanksgiving at your house, do something at your home, and you'll get some stuff done.
You better believe it. That is the truth. Sister Connie Ballestero, and a lot of people listening may not know who she was. She's gone on to be with the Lord. She, if anyone knows Nyla Markser, that would be her mother. And Nyla is my very good friend. We've been friends since teenagers, and I got to know and be around her parents quite a bit in their latter years. And even when I was a teenager, I got to go to their house. And I'm telling you, she was such a mentor to me. She was a very expressive person, and she would tell me things and teach me things, and I gleaned so much from her. I mean, I did a lot from my mother too, but this woman had a way about her that could just make you just be lapping at her feet. And she would say, Sister Kathy, when I had people over to my house and they had to sleep in Nyla's bed, I would say, oh, Nyla, guess what? You could use grandma and grandpa or a minister or whoever it is. They're coming and they get to sleep in your bed. Isn't that so exciting? And instead of making it a drudgery, this expressive, over the top, dramatic, wonderful way that she had it made it so exciting. And we're going to make a special pallet for you on the floor, or do you want to sleep on the sofa, and we'll get it all fixed up. And isn't that exciting? And so she made it so many things exciting for her children rather than it be a drudgery. I learned so much from that woman. She was such a woman of God. And so I tried to incorporate that. Some people say, well, I can't be like that. Oh, just do it. It's okay. Be really expressive. Oh, little Johnny, look how good you cleaned up your blocks off the floor, because that makes them want to do more when you're really happy about it instead of when you're mad about it.
That is true. And whenever you feel that stress or you feel upset, then your kids feel that. And then when people come over, they can feel that too.
Yes.
Talking about that, being excited and making it all exciting for people coming over and coming into your home. I think that a lot of times not having as many people into your home and not having that training, not having that hospitality, it's also doing our children a disservice for them not knowing how to respect others in their home, or having to share the things that are in their home, or whenever they go somewhere else being disrespectful because they don't know how to act in other people's home or around other people. I know for our family, like talking about setting the table, sitting at the table, eating all together as a family, that's something that we do. And I'll tell my children, I'm like, normally, honestly, it would be easier for me to not teach them how to not put their elbows on the table, how to not put their napkin correctly, how to not sit correctly at home, because I would like to just eat as well. But I have learned that that is a huge training ground and a huge opportunity. If I want them to know how to sit at a restaurant, if I want them to know how to sit at someone else's table, having to take that time whenever no one is here to tell them, okay,
Yes.
no, take your elbow off the table. No, make sure that you're sitting in your seat correctly. Use your napkin correctly. We do all those things at home when no one's here, so that when people are here, it's not just a constant fight, or they don't even really know how to do it.
That is so true. Everything you just said is so good. Eating dinner together with the family it's invaluable, because like you said, you're learning everything about hospitality, even just with your family. Whereas if you don't have room at the dining room table because it's so full of clutter and they have to go eat by themselves, they're not learning anything. And more important, however, than table manners, being talented or educated, is a child who has been taught to respect authority. And if they're taught to respect authority, it's easy to tell them to take their elbows off the table, because respect begins at home, and it must be taught by respectable parents. Parents must lay ground rules with reasonable consequences or rewards that must be followed through with total consistency. All their lives, up until they're past teenagers, as long as they're in your home, it seems like parents are constantly giving instruction with a consequence. If there is instruction only without consequences, it becomes just a suggestion. So I totally believe in, and this is my opinion, of course, everyone has different ways of raising their children. But I do believe in this. A parent gives instruction and consequences. So here's an example. You're going to take little Johnny to Walmart, and you already have planned it. You're going to buy one thing. And you've told him, if you're really good and you don't cry, you don't whine, you don't ask for anything, I will take you to the park afterwards, or something that they really like. So you go to Walmart, and if they bobble 1 ounce, if he says, I want that candy bar, You don't have to get mad. You don't have to argue. I think we argue with our children way too much and try to reason with them. All you have to say is, oh, not today. And you get in your car and you drive home. If little Johnny starts crying on the way home, you're going to take me to the park. All you have to say is, well, not today because you didn't obey me. And I'm so sorry. Maybe next time you'll obey mommy. Now, if they throw a fit, if a child throws a fit, kicking, screaming, hitting, biting, parents, please take authority immediately. You must control this child with them knowing that you are the parent. You've got to take immediate action. It is legal in all 50 states to do what the Bible says to do, and that is to spank your child. This has to start when they're very young. When you see that first sign of rebellion in them, you're going to be surprised because, oh my goodness, my daughter Heidi, this just started with her baby. We were FaceTiming and she's like, oh, Addie, don't do that. She keeps turning the dog's water bowl over. And I said, I think you need to start using a little more authority there because, she doesn't know unless your tone of voice, gets pretty like you're mad at them. And then they'll cry because you hurt them, you hurt their feelings. But it all has to start somewhere, and it has to start very young. A parent must keep their word, just like any adult does not respect another adult who does not keep their word. So it is with a child. If a parent gives a consequence and does not keep that. Now, if little Johnny was really good at Walmart, you better take him to the park because you have to keep your word. If you use restriction for a punishment, now a lot of people do. We never did that. We just took swift and immediate action with different methods, and we never did restriction, but some people do. But you must know that if you say you're grounded from your devices, you can't play games for 2 weeks, if you don't keep your word, why should they respect you? They learn really quickly to manipulate you. They learn really quickly that you're a pushover. So if you want their respect, it would be better for you to say you are on restriction for 1 day from your devices and keep your word rather than to not keep your word. Billy Graham said a child who is allowed to be disrespectful to his parents will not have true respect for anyone. Because when they go to school or they get a job and disrespect their teacher or employer, they will discover very quickly that they cannot reason with these figures of authority. They cannot argue with them, and they will follow through with their consequences. And raising children, it is such a balancing act. You've got to have fun with them. You got to laugh with them. Then you've got to turn around daily. And you know this by being a young mother. And suddenly they're fighting, something gets thrown or something crazy happens. And then you suddenly have to go into parent mode. And you got to be stern and disciplined and take care of whatever just happened. And then you go on and you're fun again. It's a real mix, a mixing bowl of all kinds of things. And you got to quit being scared of your kids. It's ridiculous. There's no need to be afraid of your children. They are children. You want a respectable adult. That's what you want to have. I can have my kids over and I'm not ashamed. My grandkids, their parents are teaching them respect. It would be horrible to have that. And I see it all the time, but it's weird. Isn't it something how it has crept in the church? And I think social media has had a big hand in that. Or I don't know. Sometimes I think it's a spirit of the age. Maybe they have too much. And I don't know. I just see so much enabling of children instead of training. And I don't have all the answers to that, but it is what it is. I would like to add here at the end that, and it doesn't really have to go with respect so much, but it's so important. And that is for your children to hear you praying for them, calling their name out loud and praying with them, not just at church. And here's something I did as a young mother. I did it with all my children. It is one of the most special things I ever did. And this was in the ages when they were crawling or being toddlers. So I always picked a time. I didn't do this daily because I didn't want it to get old to them, but I would pick a time when they were just being quiet and playing, toddling, crawling. They had to be old enough to know what I was doing. And I did it on purpose. And I would quickly just go get down by my rocking chair, and I would say, "Oh God, bless Marty today. Will you protect him?" And I would get really dramatic. I would think of Sister Ballestero and get real dramatic and expressive. And I would pray for his cars and whatever he was playing with, his teddy bear, and or Rusty, pray for his cousins and his grandparents. And I would say their name a lot. With Heidi, it was her dolls and her toys. And invariably, without fail, they would stop what they were doing and just get really quiet. And I was watching them out of one of my eyes, squinting to see what they would do. And invariably, they would crawl or toddle over to me and get in my lap and hunker down and just get real still. And those were very special moments. And then as they grew into teenagers, we always had, if it wasn't a church night, we had family prayer, either at our home or at the church. Heidi got the Holy Ghost in our living room, and we would pray with each other. And those were special times, very special times. And I would never, I feel like that's probably one of the most important things you can do with your family is for them to hear their dad praying. My dad didn't pray like a Pentecostal, but we would have family prayer at times, and he would have these beautiful long prayers. And I will never forget that, and I appreciate that. So respect is huge. It's if you can teach your child respect for authority and for things and people and for themselves, everything else falls into place. And that is something anybody that is respectable, it's something you'll never have to apologize for. Respectable behavior.
Everything that you had to say just now was so good. Honestly, I got tears in my eyes with you talking about different things that you were saying about, just having your children to be respectful, and then talking about praying and teaching them how to pray and praying with them. When your children are taught respect, and I've seen this happen in my personal life, I've seen it happen with how I was taught to respect the church, ministry, my parents, versus how some other people that were my peers, we were all in classes together, how they were taught to respect. And they weren't. They had no respect for their parents. Their parents did not enforce anything that was told them. If they had if they had something happen at school, there was no consequence at home. They didn't care. They didn't care what the teacher said. They didn't care how the teacher responded to them, what happened to them, because they knew when they got home, their parents were going to do nothing. Me, on the other hand, I knew when I got home, something was going to be done. And I didn't want to disrespect my teachers. I didn't want to disrespect my principal. And I can think of one young person very clearly in my head who they were very disrespectful to the teachers at school. It turned into being disrespectful to ministry. Their parents thought that they were, just loving them through it all and just, being caring, and they didn't spank them, they didn't make them mind. They didn't enforce anything at all. As they become adults, they turned on their parents. Now they have nothing to do with their parents. They have nothing to do with any of their family. They have nothing to do with the church. It's like they were raising them to be completely uncontrollable. They had no respect. And then there are other situations and instances where I was taught respect, and I was taught to have a deep love and respect for the church, for ministry, for my parents. And whenever it come time for me to make some life decisions, if I would not have had respect and would not have been taught that as a child, I would have made some very, very wrong decisions. But because I respected my pastor more than what my heart thought, more than what I decided that I was wanting to do, I respected him more. And I wanted to please him more than I wanted
Yeah.
to please myself, because I was taught that as a young child, that was put in me. So whenever I become old enough to make my own decisions, I made the right decision not because I wanted to, and not because it was what what I had in mind and what I had envisioned to do, but it was because I respected him. I respected his decision. I respected what he said about my life and the authority that he had in my life, that I made the right decision. And I'm so thankful looking back over that. And I think about that with my children now and those consequences you talked about. I'll tell off on myself a little bit. I have learned really quickly on some people, they can say, they do grounding and they do great with it. Their children, they say that works well for them, and that's good. I am not good at that because I am really, really mad at you for doing this terrible thing that you did at that moment. But in an hour, 2 hours, whenever they're being good and everything's calm, I'm calm back down. My blood pressure's back to a normal level. Everything is fine. And they want to do something. I'm not good. I don't hold grudges. I am not good at being mad, staying mad. I get over things too quickly, I guess. And I cannot stick with it. And Matt will say, if you said this, you have to stick with it. So I learned a long time ago, I have to spank. Yesterday we were in the heat of a moment with Ezra cleaning his room. I told him to clean his Legos. I said, I am not telling you to clean those Legos again. If I walk in here and you're not cleaning them, you're going to get a spanking. Well, I walked in and he was not cleaning them. So I just quietly walked to his dad's room. I come back, had them Legos in a pile. He's like, I'm cleaning them. I'm cleaning them. I said, Ezra, but you weren't cleaning them when I walked in. And I didn't say I was giving you another chance. I said, and so he got a quick consequence, but I've learned that about myself. I have to do that consequence quickly because I am not good at keeping something for even 48 hours.
Well, most parents aren't that, and that's the problem. It's better to just take care of it very quickly. If a child needs to apologize to someone, you take them right then. I've drugged my kids to houses and made them call on the phone, and I even made Heidi write a letter of apology once. Just you take care of it. There's other ways besides, there's different methods, but parents, if they could realize they're training their children and teaching them for their future, so they'll be respectable adults, but not only for their children's future, but for their future as well. Because who wants a 40 or 50-year-old child that is still taking advantage of you and misusing and disrespecting an older parent? And I've seen it so many times. And it's really simply because they weren't forced to respect them when they were young. I know a lot of people talk about earning respect, and I do believe in that philosophy, absolutely. But with parenting, it's your job to take this little child and this little twig that's very bendable, because they're going to get harder and harder. And you've got to fashion them and teach them respect. It's for your future as well.
So good. I feel so blessed and honored to have had you on the Unashamedly You podcast. This is one that there's no doubt people will benefit from for years to come. I know that I cannot wait to go back and listen even again myself and be able to take more notes than what I've already had to stop and write down on my phone, because it has been so good, everything that you've said, as I knew it would be. Thank you so much. Before we end, one thing that we like to end with on the Unashamedly You podcast is asking if you would leave us with one last thing for the Unashamedly You community today.
Open your heart and home, wear comfortable shoes, live respectably and righteously. And if there's something you've always wanted to do, if you want to travel or paint, do it. Take a class, do it. Life is short.
Thank you so much for being on the Unashamedly You podcast. Like I said, it was a high honor to have you on today. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to train and to teach even us moms, especially. I know that can take a lot of value from everything that you have given today.
Well, thank you for having me. And Sister Jamie, will you please tell your mother hello? I don't really know her, but I see her at the coffee shop and she's a doll. She's so sweet. In fact, everyone at your church is like, everyone's friendly. Everyone's so kind and sweet. I even needed to charge my phone at the camp meeting. I went because my granddaughter was there and I went and stayed with her so she could go. And I went in the bookstore and I said, is there any way I could charge my phone? And they were like, of course, no problem. Everyone there is just like so welcoming and sweet.
Thank you so much for
Love
being
you.
on. Love you so much. Have a great day. If this podcast has blessed or helped you in any way, we would be delighted if you would leave us a review over on Apple or Spotify and tag us on social media and tell your friends. We love when someone lets us know they are listening because a friend told them about our podcast. Go be unashamedly you.